G'day folks. Well, this is the long-awaited, highly anticipated oiling block mod. This is the video actually, this is the only one you need to watch actually. I'm going to talk about the oiling system before the mods and explain where it all sort of goes and gets distributed through the block. And then we're going to talk about the mods. So it's going to be a long one, guys. So we're going to talk about the Holden V8 early, and it'll be relevant to the VN onwards, not LS. This video will help, I hope it helps a lot of you guys that want to stick to these Holden V8s. They're a great little block. They've got their weaknesses, but with a few little tricks and a bit of knowledge, they can knock out some really good, decent power and be very reliable. So first off, we're going to talk about the oiling system and where it gets distributed through. So you've got a bit of an idea, and we'll talk about their weaknesses, and then I'll show you all the mods that I've done to it and talk about the sizes. And this is going to be your one-stop shop video for your, pretty much it's a basic oiling mod, but it will turn this block into a little beauty, really will. Well, first off guys, we'll talk about where the oil gets distributed through the block. We've got the pickup point, so we've got the long tube that runs to the back into the sump, so it gets drawn in through here and it comes down, and we've sort of got roughly about a 120-degree angle into the pump, and then from the pump it gets pumped through under pressure to feed the block. Now from there it runs down along here. We've got a 90-degree bend, so we're going back in through that way. I'll flip him over. Here we are, our first 90-degree bend. And then we run along, and then we've got another 90-degree bend, so we're going back down. And then we've got another 90-degree bend, and we run along the left-hand side lifter galley. So this floods all your lifters first on the left-hand side of the block. So we've got three 90-degree bends before we get into this part here. Okay, so this is where it gets flooded. Now, the next port of call is where does the oil go from there to flood this side galley? Well, I'll show you. This is the side first it floods, because I've rotated it. It comes up through that hole. It has to travel under the lifter, under the cam bearing, believe it or not, and go through that side hole. Well, I've blocked that off for now, and now I'll talk about that when I talk about the mods. But that's an original hole, the same size as that one, and that floods the right-hand side lifter galley. Okay, so all the oil has to travel in under or around the bearing into the other side hole to get to there. Now, to feed your main bearings, there's a hole in the cam bearing tunnel as well, but it's on the top side or underneath, and I'll rotate it back around so you can see it. There it is there, guys. Yeah. So that runs through the bottom to feed your main bearings, and it's the same on pretty much all of them. Okay, so it's not ideal. I think the trouble is there, guys, you're feeding your lifter galley first, then you're getting they're not a priority. That's what I'm sort of getting at. It's not a priority oiling system. But number 4 is the real problem here, because we're feeding the other side lifter galley, we're not getting a good flow to number 4 cam, not number 4 cam bearing, number 4 main bearing. And that's where they can suffer, because we're just not getting enough pressure back up through here, because we're having to feed the opposite side lifter galley. So it's not a real good scenario, that. And that's a lot of the reason why you block these off. Now, the front here gets fed separately. Now, where are we? A bit confused here. Rotate it. This is not a bad little idea. Pause. All right, the next trouble is, guys, with the front cam bearing, ignore that hole there, because that hole there wasn't there from factory. Now the problem is with number 1 cam bearing, this is the opposite side lifter galley, sorry I should say, that comes through from the number 4 through here originally. Well, it has to be fed from this side to feed this cam bearing. Not a very good scenario, because it's almost like the last port of call for the oiling system that gets on this cam bearing. And we've got the timing chain hanging off it. We've got extra loadings for the oil pump. So it's not an ideal situation. I should say. Now, number 1 main bearing is not bad actually, because that gets fed pretty much straight off the entry from the pump. And you can see the hole that comes up into here. So that doesn't have to go through any cam bearing tunnels to get fed. But number 2, 3, 4 and 5 have to be fed from around the back of the cam bearing and makes its way up to the main bearings. But it's number 4 that we have the problem, because, like I said earlier, we're having to feed from this side galley first and get pumped in underneath the cam bearing to feed the opposite side lifter galley. Now the trouble is there, that's fine, but we're losing pressure through here, so we're not getting as much pressure as these other 3 here, or 4 of them. So number 4 mains tends to suffer. Now to correct it, guys, there's a really tricky little way of doing it. First off, you need to drill a hole from this side feed. So we're getting oil basically straight off this part where it comes in from the pump, and then we put an annulus in here ourselves. Okay, guys? So we can feed this side galley fairly instant. We're not... This is where we're going to feed this side galley first now, is because we're blocking. What we're going to do here, we've actually blocked it, and by blocking this, I've actually got a tiny little restrictor hole in it. You can actually almost see that in the video there. It's a 2 mil hole. Some people have recommended that I actually block that completely, but Come Racing suggests that they put a little restrictor in. So I've actually just drilled that out 2 mil, and we've slowed that down to basically hardly anything at all to what it was with a 1/4 inch hole. And my theory on that is to equalise this side galley now. Okay, so we've blocked that, and we're ensuring now that we're getting a really good pressure or volume of oil to this main bearing, and that's the whole idea of doing this sort of blocking off here and drilling it out here, so we can feed this side lifter galley and get a really good flow of oil into this side still, but not compromise on number 4 main bearing. Now, this sort of mod allows for all the bearings now to cop a good load of oil, very even pressure right through, so we're not going to run the risk of any spun bearings, especially on number 4 main, which feeds the journals for the conrods. I've actually, and I'll show you what I've done there, guys. This is bloody unbelievable stuff, you know, what to even think of this, and for guys to come up and do this little trick. It's quite an amazing little mod, really. I've used a little Dremel. I've worn this. It's just a little disc you can get, but I've actually worn it right down. I'm in the throes of actually getting another one at that size they are generally. And all I've gone and done is just ground a nice little annulus in there. And I've gone around a little bit further with it because here, guys, this is where I want my cam. This is where I want my cam bearing hole clocked. And I'll show you when I turn it back around the other way. It's clocked at about 3 o'clock. Okay, so when you clock it around there, the cam's rotating this way. It's going to flood the oil really nicely on the bottom of this sort of bearing through here. So that's the reasoning in behind it. The rest of the bearings, I'm going to clock or get them clocked, the hole openings for the oil to come out at around about 3 or 4 o'clock. So we can get a good film of oil and it'll help wipe it around and feed, because this is a high load part through here, the bottom side of the bearing when the lifters are, you know, all the lifters and everything's pushing on it. This is where you want a real high load of oil through here. So that should work very well, that. Now, on number 4 cam bearing, I ended up drilling and tapping a what was it, a 8 BSP, but I was told later, guys, that you don't have to go that big. You can actually go to an M8 at a 1.25 thread. Apparently you don't have to drill. You can just tap it, and rather than use the 1/8 BSP, which I used, because you need an 8.5mm drill, and it was something I sort of I got away with it, guys, because there was a lot of modifying to get it. But yeah, if you can just send a tap pretty much straight down, like on that side, but obviously on this side, with you can tap it straight down in there. And the idea is you've got to pretty much have it so it's fairly well flush on that annulus, so you can get a good flow of oil around the back of the bearing. Whether or not you do a hole, a 2mm hole, restrictor hole to feed this, well, just to even equalise it, it's up to you, but I did a 2mm hole. And I tell you what, it's a lot better than the 3mm, well, the 1/4-inch hole that was there originally to feed this side galley. And you've got to remember too now, we're feeding it from this port. So there will be a fair amount of oil pressure, and it's just going to equalise that much better now. So, yes. Now another little trick I did, guys, was all these holes are 1/4 inch. Okay, all the main bearing holes that run off the cam, the backs of the cam, are all 1/4 inch, and the same for all these into the lifter galleys. They're all 1/4 inch. Well, I stepped it up and went to 6.5 mil. Now that's another little thing you can do. There's not much in it over the 1/4, but it just seemed to clean them out that little bit extra. It wasn't much in it. In actual fact, I'll show you what a 1/4 inch. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. There's nothing in it. That's the 1/4 inch, and that's the new 6.5 mil hole. So it's just that little bit bigger. Just just gives it that little bit more flow, and it wasn't hard to drill. It was pretty straightforward. So that's what I did there. Now, the cam bearing groove. Now I just want to let you guys know that you're really a minimum 3/16 deep. It has to be at least the same as the other cam bearing groove. So I'm not happy with that. I'm actually going to go slightly, just a slightly deeper and just work on it just that tiny little bit more, because this is going to be a high demand point for this side galley. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do there, guys. Just open him up, just that whisker. Now there's another little trick you can do. These are generally all, well, that's the actual little feed. It's a little pipe that comes out, and that feeds the chain to the cam chain. And I ended up deleting that and putting a little 1/8 BSP in there and blocking that off. You can do it, you don't have to. To me, I think it's just a leak point. There's enough oil splashing around in the engine to keep things lubricated. You've got to remember too, in the cam, this is a cam bolt or retaining bolt, and there's an actual thing that holds the cam to stop it from sort of walking out. That's actually got a really small hole in it too, so if you're getting a little bit of like piss of oil coming out of that, it's going to hit the back of the timing case cover, and that'll spread oil everywhere. So I was happy to go with that. But these are generally Welsh plugs. You can tap these straight out and do away with the Welsh plugs and run a, what is it? A 3/8 BSP plugs instead of Welsh plugs. You don't have to drill them either, guys. You can just tap them straight out if you've got the correct tap. And that's what I've sort of gone and done too. So we've got one here, and when you rotate it around, I've got one in the top there, because these are access points for when they were drilling them out. And there was already a tap in the back of the block. And can you see it there, guys? Yeah, you can just pick it up there in the video. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so that was already there, and I've just put a bung in that. Now there's just a little tip, guys, I found. It's all in the detail, these little things. You've got to be on your bungs. Just be careful that the bungs, the threads, or the bottom of the bung going through the thread doesn't interfere with the hole, like protrude and create a slight restriction. We don't want that. So I was very mindful on all these, that one and this one here. Now, because I've got the new hole drilled on that angle, I had to be very mindful that I didn't, this bung here doesn't interfere with that. And if it does, you have to sort of grind it back a little bit, just so you've got clearance. It's just something to be mindful of there. Now, my next little sort of mod, guys, I was going to drill out this. So these are 9/16. I was actually going to step it up to 5/8, but I can't find, and I'm sure you could, but it'd get very expensive. I was going to put a drill bit and try and drill that whole section out down to this sort of point down here, and just try and create a little bit more volume, but yeah, I can't get a drill bit. I can only get it one to about, and I'll show you guys. I could probably get 2/3 if I was, 2/3 if I was lucky. So I gave up on that idea of drilling this out. I just left it alone. I think that'll be fine. But what I did do, guys, I ended up drilling the inlet out, and I've increased the diameter to the pump. Now I eventually want to step up my pickup pipe to 5/8 inside diameter, so or around that, increase over whatever the standard one was. So now we can get incredible volume to the pump. The pump won't have to work as hard to draw, and it can focus on delivering the oil, and I think that's going to have a huge benefit there. So a little bit of time in drilling that out. You've got to take your time and sort of check things over as you're drilling, and yes, I wonder if I can show you, get down in there and I'll show you that hole. Yeah, here you go. All makes a difference, guys. You've got to sort of think flow with the oiling system. So there you go. Cam bearing groove 3/16. We used a 2mm restrictor drill hole when I bunged off number 4 cam bearing to the opposite side. I used a 6.5mm drill bit for the oil holes over the 1/4 inch. You can use a 5/8 hole over the 9/16 running into the pickup through block, and I used they recommend an M8/1.25 thread for the number 4 cam block, rather than the 1/8 BSP that I used, because it needs an 8.5 drill bit to drill out. Can do it the way I did it, but if I had my time over again, I'd probably go back and use the smaller one. And the 3/8 BSP plugs instead of Welsh plugs. And that, guys, will ensure that we've got delivery where we need it, pressure where we need it, and it should turn something, like you should be able to spin this fairly well with confidence now, as long as we've got good oil pickup, we don't suffer surge, anything like that. We should turn this into quite a reliable little streeter. I'm only going to buzz this thing to probably 6.5 at best. Yeah, and it should be a good little mod. Not an expensive mod. Even if you include the drill bits and everything, we probably no more than $100, if that. It's fantastic. I'm very happy with it, and I thank you guys for helping me, point me in the right direction on sizings and where to clock the cam bearings and bits and pieces like that. I really couldn't do it without you. It's been fantastic, and I hope that you guys get something out of this video, because it's there's not much out there. Come do one, but he doesn't say much, he just says, oh, you can do this and that. You've really got to try and puzzle it together yourself. But I hope I've sort of dissected it a little bit more and you can understand, and it's a good reference tool for you or whoever wants to improve the oiling system on these Holden V8s. All right, folks, well, I'm about to lose my voice. It's been a long one. Any questions, I'm more than happy to try and answer them. Even if you've got some other ideas or tips, throw them my way, because that's what it's all about, guys, helping one another out. And yeah, they're a great little block and they're a great engine. I love them. All right, guys, I'll put one up soon. Catch you later.